This is a video for the expectations for peer review for WRD 103. So I think we ought to start off by just thinking about the term itself, peer review. Traditionally, and I will say honestly how I have done it in the past, is that a peer review is actually a review of students within the class, them talking to each other. So everyone in the class would draft a paper, we would then come together, people would then share the draft together in class and give feedback to each other. I still believe that's a very powerful process. I still think it's a very important part. But due to the kind of considerations of the hybrid class, we're only meeting one day a week, I didn't want to use that class time for peer review. So I was trying to think of other ways that we could engage in the writing process. Ultimately, the word peer, I think, is the key here as well. Because a lot of ways, anyone who is kind of giving you feedback, and they're doing it not thinking of it as an instructor. So the same way that I talked about the fact that don't think of myself as an instructor for this class, but I think of myself as a coach. I might even kind of think of myself as a peer. As a peer, I go like, oh, think about this or think about that. So part of this process, and so part of it also is that writing, I think we oftentimes have this kind of idea that writing is something you kind of do by yourself. It's a solitary activity. But the reality is writing is a collaborative activity. It's a process where what we would think of the term recursive, the meaning that it's almost like cyclical. So you draft, you revise yourself, you get feedback on the draft, you revise again, you draft again as well. And that process ends up refining and making the writing better as well. So the substitute for giving feedback to each other I'm going to have you work with the tutors at the Writing Center. One thing about working with tutors at the Writing Center, and a lot of times people have a misconception about writing centers, that somehow or another it's a remedial process, that the only reason you would go to the Writing Center is because you're a bad writer. But the reality is that good writers get to be better writers by working with other writers. All the tutors at the Writing Center have been recommended by instructors at the university. They go through an extensive hiring process. It's a very competitive job. So we have lots of people apply, and not everyone gets the job as well. They then have an extensive training period. They go through an entire quarter of training to be a tutor, and then have ongoing professional development each quarter as well. So they end up being, good writers, and they can really help you with the writing. So during the course of the quarter, we'll draft 4 papers, and to fulfill the contract for a B, you need to meet with a tutor at the Writing Center for 1 hour, 3 times during the course of the quarter. Needs to be separate papers, so you can't pick like, I'm going to do essay 1 and get 3 different people to give me feedback on it. So it needs to be at least 3 of the 4 papers. Now you can definitely get feedback on all 4 of the papers. I would highly recommend that. That would probably be a good process for it as well. But you're only required to get 3. You can get either 2 types of modalities. One of them is an online real-time video conference. What we refer to as an asynchronous, so it's happening in real time. Or you can get written feedback. So that's where you upload a draft, the tutor does it on their own time, they provide feedback for you, and then they email it back to you. But you do not have to be present for the appointment as well. Both of these appointments need to be for a full hour. The other thing that ends up happening is that you also need to have them send me a verification notice. When you watch the earlier video that I did about setting up your account, that's where I'm talking about like, hey, so you can have someone sent an email summary of the appointment. And that's how I'm going to track whether or not you have or have not completed this element of the contract for B as well. So what will end up happening is, and so basically it's every other week's, or for the next 8 weeks, you'll have a rough draft due for peer review, and then you'll have a draft due to me, kind of after you revise based on that feedback as well. I'll give you feedback on that draft right there as well. So this is kind of the first stage. So every Sunday, and pretty much every other week, so it'll end up being for Essay 1, it's the 20th, for Essay 2, it's October the 4th, for Essay 3, it's the 18th, and for Essay 4, it's November the 1st as well. you'll submit a draft by 11:59 into Digication. I will get up Monday morning. I'll just double check to make sure something's there as well. I'm not going to evaluate these papers, but I do want to make sure that you have something that you can then submit to the Writing Center and work for feedback as well. So this is kind of the big thing to kind of keep in mind in part of this process. And it's part of the reason why I do the contract for a B, is I don't expect you in a first draft of a paper for it to be perfect. But you do need to have something almost near complete. So if the word count's 1,000 words, you need to have almost 1,000 words down so that you can have something to get feedback on as well. If you've just kind of got a rough idea or something like that, that's not going to do it. So I double check to make sure that you have uploaded something into Digication. Now, so what your requirement ends up being as well, and this is a huge part of the participation grade for this as well, is that you have to schedule your own appointment in WC Online. Before the appointment, you need to upload a draft to WC Online. And this needs to be a Word document, not as part of your digital portfolio, because whether you're doing an online real-time as a synchronous appointment or doing written feedback, the tutors need to have a Word document that they can work with as well. A lot of times, this is a small point, I usually draft in a Word document and then cut and paste into Digication right there as well. Digication can be a little squirrely sometimes, so I usually don't trust it for my first draft. So I think drafting in a Word doc is probably a smart move anyway as well. Then you need to complete the appointment. So these are the kind of things right there. So you're responsible for setting the appointment. You're responsible for uploading the draft to Digication or to WC Online for the tutor, and then you're responsible for completing the appointment either by getting the written feedback and doing something with it or meeting with the tutor for a face-to-face appointment. If you're thinking about, I would end up saying, why I ended up saying that I didn't say like it has to be a written feedback or it has to be a face-to-face, is I think both kind of forms of feedback can be beneficial. I would recommend that you probably set up at least a couple of both types during the quarter. So maybe have a couple of written feedbacks, maybe have one or two video conferences as well. Because I think talking to somebody can be really beneficial, but I do also understand that time constraints can be difficult as well. Needs to be a full hour. If you think this is going to be an appointment that's going to take 5 minutes, you remember, I work at the Writing Center. I have full access to talking and working with the tutors. And I will follow up. If I'm like, because I usually can tell in the summary letter, they'll, whether or not, how long the appointment is. But I can literally follow up with the tutors as well. So make sure you're using this for the full time as well. So what will end up happening is there's kind of like an enrollment period. So that you submit the paper on Sunday, and then you have a week. You have 5 days, Monday through Friday. Remember, the Writing Center is open Monday through Friday, from like 9 in the morning till 7 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday through Thursday. Friday closes up early at 5. But that's a big chunk of time as well. And early in the quarter, especially in the first peer review you have, which will be the first active week of the Writing Center, you should have plenty of availability as well. A couple of things. I would end up saying this right here, is that you got to have to kind of trust in this process as well. This really isn't some just bogus thing I'm just making you do to kind of eat up time and during the course of the quarter. Working with a tutor really is going to improve your writing. They're going to tell you things, they're going to give you ideas, they're going to mention things that you didn't think about, and I think that's super beneficial. However, if you think you're not going to get anything out of it, I promise you you're not going to as well. So if you're not open to the experience, and that's what I'm talking about, kind of like engaging the process as part of the contract for a B and willingness to explore. This is where both of these really come into play right here as well. One of the other things that you might end up doing as well is I might recommend that you go ahead right now, and once you get this, you set up your account, you could go ahead and set up all your appointments for each of the peer review weeks during the course of the quarter. It could be with different tutors or it could be with same tutors right now. You know all the dates right here, so you need to set up an appointment during the week of 9/21 to 9/25, one appointment between 10/5 and 10/9, one appointment between 10/19 and 10/23, and one appointment between 11/2 and 11/6. You can go ahead and just set them up It's nice to actually have what they refer to as a standing appointment, so you can work with the same tutor over and over again. That can be really beneficial. They know you, your writing, and the assignments. And they also kind of know me, so that can also be beneficial in terms of this as well. If you end up having difficulties with, or you want to set up standing appointments and don't know how to do it, or have some challenge with WC Online, please feel free to email me or stop by my office hours. But the Writing Center also has a chat feature in WC Online. I'll have a link here in this as well. If you want to talk directly to a receptionist, they can also help you set up a standing appointment or find somebody that you could work with as well. All right, hope this was beneficial, and good luck with your peer reviews.